Welcome to the Growler, a Who Dey podcast hosted by Paul Dana and other bald friends like Mo Egger, Dave Niinemets, home of all your Bengals breaks, takes. Welcome to the Growler.
All right, welcome into the latest edition of Balds Don't Lie on the Growler. Paul Dana Jr. of The Athletic here with you, along with my good friend, fellow bald, and man who's working on his sleeping circadian rhythms, Dave Niinemets. What's up, buddy?
It's not easy, man. When the wife goes off to Europe and just leaves you here, and you're dealing with all the wife stuff early, and dealing with all the staying up late stuff that you like to do, it's tough.
Are you expected to be able to fend for yourself as a singular person?
I cannot. I'm just eating beans out of a can here, just trying to get by.
Look, there's a strict standing order in my house. You cannot leave. Okay, you have to stay. I cannot keep these things together. Right? There's too many pieces, and I'm not equipped for it.
Yeah, and I'm not even dealing with kids like you. I'm just incapable of functioning in life. So
no, I don't know. Where do they go in the morning? Do I send them to school? Do I just leave them in the basement? Is there a crate?
It's hard. Life's hard, man.
No. I'm sure we'll be able to function just fine. I don't know for how long we would be able to do it, but for just fine. Well, thank you for finding your way to the room where your computer is, and joining us. We've got a bunch of stuff that we need to get to. Mo Egger, of course, is going to join us here as always on our Balds Don't Lie Tuesday. And we're going to talk about Joe Burrow. You're going to hear from offensive coordinator Dan Pitcher, who we spoke to in our Monday session yesterday, and tried to shed some light on the just confounding opener from the Bengals franchise quarterback. I wrote about that today a little bit, a lot actually. Sorry, Dave, that was a little long.
No,
but the way that game ended up playing out, the way he ended up playing, the latest in an edition of clunkers from him to start seasons, and his kind of reluctance to really let it rip. We're going to get into all of that here in a little bit. I do want to let everybody know that we'll have PD&J on Thursday this week, and then Who Dey Light on Friday before the Bengals head to Kansas City. If you have questions that you want answered, comments, do you think you have ideas for Dave's sleeping patterns, send them to the Growler podcast at gmail.com, and we'll try to get to them specifically on Who Dey Light with me and Mark, as we like to give you guys a chance to kind of drive some of what you're thinking and on that show. And you know what? I think you could probably have used some Who Dey Light on Monday, to be honest. Like a Who Dey Light and some Bush Light probably would have been a good combo for Bengals fans on a Monday morning, because it was a little bit of a rough one. But maybe the mood will be different. Maybe the mood will change at our next live show at BetMGM and Nation Kitchen and Bar down at the Banks, which is before the Monday Night Football game. So 4:00 on the 23rd there that Monday, before the Bengals play the Washington Commanders on Ring of Honor night. We will be down there doing our fun show giveaways. There's a Jamar Chase jersey. We've got all kinds of tailgating stuff. We've been giving away about $75 to $100 in gift cards and bonus bets and all kinds of stuff. We'll have the cornhole game back out for people to just come and just win. It's been really great. It's been a ton of fun. Like, I don't even really know how we end up with this much giveaways. We've had free graders for everybody. People have been loving that, and you can't beat that. So it's just been a fun party that we've been able to do. So, you're coming down there, get your $3 Cincy Lights, $6 Queen City Nacho trays. Come drink for cheap, get free stuff, listen to us talk football, and have some fun. 4:00 before the Monday Night Football game on the 23rd. And if any big event you want to reserve tables in Nation, you can go to nationkitchenandbar.com. You can reserve tables to make sure you have space to drink and watch the games. It's an awesome venue right down there on the Banks next to GABP, and really close to the big Banks party on game day. So I hope you guys will come and check us out. I want to talk about some news. So there's a little bit, not a ton of news out of yesterday from down at the facility. You had Amarius Mims. Caution, caution, caution is kind of the tone of those conversations. He's looking, they liked the way he looked in practice last week in individual, and I think they're probably ready to ramp him up. They're just going to be careful with a rookie who hasn't played, and it's the pec obviously is so important to getting that back all the way at 100%. Trent Brown with a just ugly whiff on the first block of the game certainly didn't help everybody's ability to feel like they can be comfortable with caution. And, and he had another one later in the game that led to a sack that wasn't great. And so they hope that would be better, and they're going to see with Amarius Mims. So we'll keep an eye on that. But just the tone of it sounded like they're probably, whenever they think he's ready, they'll go another week. Probably is kind of how it feels with that. And at a certain point, you need Trent Brown to not whiff on his first block. I like it. This is the season, Dave, where you get he probably had one he'd like to have back. Yeah. Yeah. Everybody has something they'd like to have back. Yeah. The other day,
he burned that mulligan early, didn't he? Just right out of the game.
Breakfast ball. We've all been there. You step up to the tee, first one shanks into the woods. You just all right, let's stretch it back out a little bit better. Second guy's going to step up and swing at that one. That's what we got from Trent Brown on that first snap. So they're seeing where they're at with that. T. Higgins, still don't know on that. Hamstrings, always something that you're going to kind of follow day to day. It certainly wasn't ruled out, so we'll see where he's at when it comes to Wednesday being out there. But that would be a thing where, again, we'll get into the how's he feeling and how willing is he to go out there if it's still a little bit tight or tender or whatever. You just want to get all the way back at this point in the season. We've talked a lot about that, so I won't go too much further, but we'll keep an eye on that Wednesday. Chris Jenkins had his surgery on his thumb last Friday. He was in there with it wrapped the other day. There's a chance that he goes out there and plays with a wrap on it against Kansas City. That's another one. Again, we'll track it. I hope you go back and listen to the walkout and don't say that you were too drunk or in too dark of a place to do it. Because I kind of went into my full range of thoughts on the Jamar Chase versus Bengals lose that went down. I wrote about it as well in my column after the game on the lose weekend that the Bengals had. It was actually hard to count them all up, how many ways they lost on and off the field this past weekend. That said, the negotiations are over. They're punted to next year. It ended up basically being, when we look back on it, it ended up being like Justin Jefferson was last year, where they couldn't reach a deal and punted to the next year, except far more contentious in public. Yeah. And that was the problem.
And that's the scary part moving forward, is there's not really that clean break you had maybe with Jefferson or other guys where it's like, okay, I'm just going to put my head down and play now. Jamar got out there and played. He didn't have a horrible game. He didn't really get anything spectacular, but the numbers were okay. But how disgruntled will he be moving forward? I think that's got to be a concern. Are you getting everything from him? I'd like to think you do. I'd like to think Kansas City sparks some things in terms of competitiveness and kind of setting aside the off the field stuff, but who knows? That's a little bit scary moving forward when you had that whole offseason with that.
Yeah, that's you need a common enemy at this point to get everybody a little bit more juiced up. Kansas City is that. But yeah, Jamar's always kind of just mad the first couple weeks of the season. He's just when it starts slow, like it has every year, he gets mad. It was his second game ever. He was throwing coaches under the bus for not throwing the ball to him in Chicago. This has kind of been common. Last year it was, I'm always effing open. He doesn't like September very much. It takes him a while. He's kind of the way that you probably wake up in the morning, Dave. It takes a while to get the day going.
And grumpy until you get to that point. Yeah.
Yeah. You got to get that.
And I wake up every day feeling like I don't get paid enough. So I have a lot in common with Jamar.
You guys are the same guy.
Yeah. Yeah.
So true.
Well, like, here's kind of a thought. He doesn't, this is going to come down to like how much Jamar's a competitor, which we know he is, and how much he wants to win. He doesn't really have to have a great season or really give a crap, and his value will still be through the roof. You know what I mean? Like, he's Jamar Chase. So if this becomes kind of this, you almost think back to like Lamar Jackson in his year leading up to his contract. And he was sitting out hurt a lot and he didn't seem real happy. He still got his money. And you would just hope that, you know, it's not like Jamar's playing to prove anything at this point. You would just hope that he's competitive enough that he's going to go out there and he wants to win and he wants to be there for his guys and everything. I think that will be the case. He just has that makeup. But again, it's kind of that other part of the unknown. He could kind of sleepwalk through this year and he's still probably looking at $40 million a year next year.
Yeah, and I mean, inevitably, like you're out there, you're playing the sport, you're trying to win a championship, you are doing all those things, and you are playing as to put the latest data point in your claim to be the #1 receiver in the NFL, and I think that eventually takes over and drives people, and they're able to get past it. I don't think that ends up being a problem on game day specifically. You might get some of the other stuff that's you're gonna have to deal with during the year, and the Bengals earned that, but. I think on game day when they're out there, I think you get them, you get T, you get Jamar, you get it all. It's and that's what the Bengals are kind of counting on. Somehow the Bengals didn't have the worst weekend in the AFC North. Cleveland takes the title on that one, thanks to the latest turn in their delightful investment of $230 million guaranteed dollars into Deshaun Watson. Is the Browns, he looked lost. Yeah. Just lost. Yeah. You know, they're yearning for Joe Flacco's understanding and ability to use the offense, and then caught a new suit against it, which is gross. If you want to read it, you can. But more problems follow him. More problems follow them. The money that they would have to take on just by cutting him is astronomical, where they could barely field a team otherwise. They're stuck with it. They bought in. How did they manage to get the situation at quarterback worse?
They're the Browns.
Like, you got the last 20 years of the jersey and the name, and now you just have one name you can't pull off of it. They kept adding them on before. Now they have one that they can't get off, and it's
when
wild.
You're wishing when you're wishing Spurgeon Wynn would walk through that door. That's a bad sign. When you're yearning for the days of Spurgeon Wynn, that's a bad sign.
You know what? It's the North is a mess. You know, although I thought the Ravens looked really good in the opener against Kansas City.
The Ravens look like they have some things to figure out for sure. Their offensive line needs to do some gelling. They've got to realize that Derrick Henry out of the shotgun isn't ideal Derrick Henry, but they still were a toe away from going for 2 to try to win that game. So they're in pretty good shape, I think.
Yeah, I think that, you know, they looked ready. They certainly looked like they were playing at a pretty high level. Yes, they're working through some things, and we'll see. And then Pittsburgh looked like Pittsburgh, right? They won an ugly game against with a quarterback, their quote quarterback play being but they went out there and did what Mike Tomlin does. They found a way to win. They're the only team in the AFC North that won in the opening weekend. So everybody's kind of figuring stuff out a little bit. We should say, and you know, we'll see if Justin Fields, I guess, is going to continue to be the starter. Russell Wilson supposedly is going to be the guy whenever he is back healthy, but he's dealing with a calf. I don't need to explain that to Bengals fans and how challenging that is to deal with as a team, but they will see when he gets back and hope he doesn't tweak it again. Boy, is that a familiar storyline, reading the reports out of Pittsburgh. He tweaked it when he thought he was all the way back, and now he's kind of reverting. But oh my God, you're giving me PTSD. But I don't need PTSD when we're already living the current nightmare of dealing with Joe Burrow's health situation being front and center. So the Bengals go from being the biggest favorite in football in week 1 to one of its biggest underdogs in week 2. They're a 6-point dog on the BetMGM line right now in Kansas City. going against Patrick Mahomes. If you thought it was tough trying to stop Jacoby Brissett and company, wait till you see this one. So off we go. Defensively, and we're going to get to Burrow here in a moment. I want to start with cover a couple of defensive things before I totally dive in. You know, the theme after the game, Dave, was look, missed tackles. And it's not wrong. You watched it with your own eyes. You saw it. You know, they end up with PFF tracked them for 13 missed tackles in yesterday's game, which would have been the second most last year when that was a total abomination. And the reason why they struggled specifically early in the game, this was 100% just like last year, early last year defense, where the missed tackles were an issue over and over again. Zach Taylor called it 80-something yards after missed tackles as they tracked it as a team. And when you consider they let up 170 on the ground and Ramondre Stevenson had 120, I mean, you're just same old, you know. Geno Stone with 3, Dax Hill had a couple. This is kind of become who they are right now, and specifically early in the season. I don't know if that means that. I don't know what that means. I don't know if it's something that will continue on. They've fixed this problem before. They did eventually fix the missed tackle thing last season, but for it to continue to be that bad is, you know, a concern beyond just the fact that they got pushed around in the trenches.
I mean, it's frustrating coming out of camp too, that like it's such a basic thing and you're already struggling with it. Like, I don't know. You don't want to have to fix that on the fly. That should not be something that you're struggling with right away in week one. And I'll use an example as a Seahawks fan. I watched that game and you can tell Mike McDonald had his guys ready to tackle. I watched a lot of years of Pete Carroll's guys post Legion of Boom, unable to wrap guys up outside of Bobby Wagner. And they were wrapping guys up all over the field at every level. So there's some, I think, level of coaching there. There's some level of just preparation there, but it's kind of an odd thing to be dealing with right out of the gate, in my opinion, especially when it's been a problem in the past.
Yeah. And does that mean that the defense should be playing more in the preseason? I think you can make that. I think you can make that argument at a certain point. Also, you just need guys that are going to be more short tacklers. I think, you know, that was the one rep on Geno Stone, who had 3 yesterday, was that look, he can cover. He's instinctual for the ball. He's going to miss his fair share of tackles. That's where his weakness is. That's part of why he hasn't played more or been at a higher level. Sometimes that's been a knock. And so you see that right out of the gate. Dax Hill, you know, we saw some of that last year when he was playing safety, where some of the missed tackle stuff was an issue, and it was again. So we'll see how that cleans up. But outside of just getting beat up in the trenches, that continues to be an issue. But that was not really, and we'll get more. I'm sure we'll get more, a little bit more with Jay on Thursday. We'll talk to Lou Anarumo on Wednesday and have a little bit more from the locker room on a defense that's going to be preparing for Patrick Mahomes and some of the history there between Lou and Patrick and that whole dynamic. Me and Jay will focus a lot on that on Thursday. We want to kind of get into the Burrow situation here real quick. And so one thing I wanna do is bring in Dan Pitcher from yesterday in his media session. I cut up about 2.5 minutes or so here of about a 20-minute session where he's talking about a few things about Joe, evaluating Joe's performance, his view of a couple of different topics along those lines. So let's bring in Dan Pitcher from yesterday on a day after a day where they assessed Burrow's struggles in general, how the New England defense was just really focusing on disguising things to keep them confused and left Burrow looking quite confused, to be honest. And so here's Dan Pitcher talking a little bit about Joe Burrow's performance on Sunday.
You know, I think there's some good stuff. I think with a lot of guys, same story. Like, there's some good, not enough good. I think he'd be the first one to tell you that. And, you know, so we'll move forward and And I think there's areas to improve, and there's areas of the things that he did positively that we need to continue to see out of him. So, not good enough from anybody.
Hey, did you see him be hesitant at all on certain throws?
No, I mean,
he's made in the past.
No, I don't see. Listen, there was a couple of times I think the picture changed. That's one of the things they do well on defense is, they change the picture on you very close to the snap. They're well coordinated, and so when that happens, sometimes you pick it up a tick late, and that affects just your ability to distribute the ball. But there's no one thing. I don't characterize his performance by any type of hesitancy, maybe on a couple plays, but overall we just got to be better.
Is that a thing where it's not either you see it or you don't? It can take reps and get into the season before you start picking it up quicker as you go.
Yeah, I think that's safe to say. I mean, I think you can make that blanket statement where, particularly when you're playing a team, it's going to show you one thing and give you another, which are most of them. Some are better at it than others, and the team we just played is good at it. And so it. I wouldn't say I never felt like he was fooled. But there's times where certainly our execution could have been better there and at other spots.
Seems like you guys felt the protection largely settled down as the game went on, maybe to say. But when you get hits when your first drop back and a couple early, can that speed up tempo and clock in a quarterback's head? And do you feel like maybe that was something that happened with Joe early in this game?
I think it can. You'd have to ask Joe that question. That's something that can happen. So we go to great lengths to try to limit those situations. Again, it's a challenging defense. They do things that make you go to the line with one thought, and that's not always what you end up snapping the ball doing because you've made an adjustment based on an adjustment they've made. And so that's the cat and mouse game. And, so that happens sometimes. But, yeah, that can affect the quarterback. We try not to let it. As a quarterback, you try not to let it affect you. But sometimes it does.
There is Dan Pitcher kind of assessing a little bit of Joe Burrow's performance. I want to, there's something, and Jay kind of mentioned this about it taking time for a season for that processing to happen and get to, the levels that you need it to be. Let's take a look at the last 3 years as we talk about the Bengals being 1-5 in these first two games, and 1-6. Sorry. But when you talk about these games dating back to 2021, the first and second week of the season, you're going to go with a guy that has done this over and over again. When we talk about the Bengals losing, Burrow has played bad in these. So, I love adjusted net yards per attempt, Dave. I think it's the correlative stat to winning and advancing in the playoffs and everything. Let's just use that as a barometer, okay? If you filter into the last 3 years, the first two games of the season, and just say who had what the adjusted net yards per attempt rankings. Mm-hmm. Joe Burrow in weeks 1 and 2 ranks 39th out of 45. Okay. And you can pick other categories. He's down there in all of them. Here's the list. Can I give you the list of the bottom 10?
Do it.
One of these things is not like the other one. Daniel Jones, Mitch Trubisky, our guy Jacoby Brissett, Joe Burrow, retired Matt Ryan, Kenny Pickett, Justin Fields, Deshaun Watson, Zach Wilson, and Bryce Young. There's your bottom 10 amongst all the qualifiers in weeks 1 and 2 over the last 3 years. This is just consistent, and we've blamed it on camp, and we've blamed it on appendix, and we blamed it on this, that, and the other. And this time, well, I don't know what. I guess we're blaming it on the wrist, maybe. Perhaps it's who he is. Yeah. We used to talk about this with the first and second drives of games. Burrow would seem to struggle, and he would figure out what's going on and then improve and be good at putting the puzzle together and really getting things going. You wonder if this wasn't even really about his preseason and camp reps after all, or maybe it is, but it was mostly just, this is just kind of maybe who he is. Because let's go. If I filter then to the 3rd and 4th weeks of the season, in that he ranks 9th in 5 through 8. He ranks 3rd in 9 through 18. He ranks 7th. All of those are over 7 adjusted net yards per attempt, which is an elite number. That's a top 3 number over the course of, this full time span. That is who he becomes. But before that, he's this, and this has been the case. And he's been largely responsible for them playing poorly in the first couple of weeks of these seasons.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's when you talk about what he becomes is why you don't press the panic button right now. I mean, there's a reason by the end of the year, we kind of forget about these beginning of the year performances. I think we do look back at the record and say, ooh, if they hadn't started out 1-3 or whatever, they'd be in much better shape. But he does seem to find his groove every year. I think the question you asked in there to pitcher that's a little bit concerning is you're kind of asking if he's seeing ghosts after getting hit early. And I think that's the thing to monitor. If he just starts to look like that guy who drops his eyes and looks worried all the time. I mean, it's not his makeup, but I think it can happen to any quarterback. We've seen a lot of good quarterbacks kind of go down that path. So I think as a fan, you take a deep breath and you say, we will see the Joe Burrow we know as the season progresses. But man, for it to happen every year, and like you said, he had a whole offseason without all the impediments in the way. That's pretty crazy that, we're seeing the same thing again.
Yeah, that is what it has been. And that is your worry, right? What is this? Is this just his normal first and second week thing? Or are we seeing a new afraid to rip it Joe Burrow? Yeah. I have a column assessing that question up at The Athletic right now. Dave edited it.
Yeah.
Very nicely. You massaged it.
I left your let it rip right there in the headline.
Yeah, and I appreciate it. You probably didn't like that cliche, but you
I was okay with it.
You let it rip a little bit there.
I let it rip. You didn't say anything about anyone getting a bag.
No. There were no mismatches. There were no
nightmares. No.
So but wait till I write an Eric All story. You're going to be getting a mismatch nightmare over the place. Over the place. All right, Dave, I appreciate you getting up and finding your way into your normal rhythms for us today.
Sure.
And we will talk to you next week. Have a good one.
All right.
All right, and now we're going to welcome my friend, our friend, yours, Mo Egger, ESPN 1530. What's up, buddy?
How we doing?
Doing all right. How are you doing? It wasn't the greatest weekend of football for you to witness between your time at the UC experience and then your time at the Paycor Stadium experience.
It was miserable.
It was
miserable. Not gonna lie. Yeah.
But before we get into that, Mo, you and I have similar plights. We both have daughters, and they're both about the same age, and they want to know, why is Daddy screaming at the television? Why does the television make Daddy sad?
Why did I come home in such a bad mood?
I have. This is really cool. I've done this and I've used this. There is that you can get this. It's called Future Fans. Okay. And it's basically a storybook led activity box, and it helps kids even as young as 4. My youngest daughter now is doing a great job understanding why Daddy comes home frustrated. Helps them understand how football works. So I mean, have you ever tried to teach Crosley football? Has it gone well?
It hasn't gone well at all. Although I did tell her that Taylor Swift might be at the game on Sunday, and so now her interest has been piqued.
Yeah. Sometimes that's all. That's how I do know that they definitely know that the Bengals are playing the Chiefs. That's where Taylor Swift's boyfriend plays. Yeah. They know that. So this is really cool. I've actually used this with my kids, and it worked. So they basically, what they do is they're not going to try to explain explain it by just, hey, watch the game. You have this storybook, an activity book that's quick, and each day you kind of go through a different one, and they don't try to explain. They use downs as like these bean bags, so you're trying to throw them into a circle. So it's a different way of understanding something that's very simple. And then when you go to watch the game, you understand how downs work. And the same thing with the concept of, getting 6 points for something at the end and going back and forth. So it's really cool. And then they connect it back to football and totally get the whole thing. In this book, they have, it kind of takes you through this fun story of this camp, and there's touchdown dances that make them get up and dance and have fun, and they love it, right? But then when you're done, there's all the other things about footballs in the book, and including after I taught them and they were like knowing what football was, they had a route tree in there, just as a basics, like this is the different, like a route tree.
Yeah.
My kids loved the route tree. We were outside and they're like, I'm running a 9. And I'm like, you're running a 9? And so I'm like, all right. And then she did. There she goes on the go ball. Daddy, I like it when you run a hitch better. And then when you run a 9. And I was like, okay, this is unbelievable. And so it's really fun. They come down to training camp every year. Now they know, hey, run or pass. They try to play the game where they guess whether it's going to be a run or pass, which is part of the game of learning the game too when you're watching it. So really, really cool. And people love it. 4.9 on Amazon ratings. They've won 6 toy awards. I give it a 5. Worked for my kids. It was awesome. If you want your kid to understand football, Future Fans is for you. It's only $49.99. Use the code GROWLER at futurefans.com and you'll get 10% off, or you can grab locally in my hood at King Arthur's Court in Oakley. So make sure you go there, check it out, and you'll unlock a lifetime of memories with your kid starting now. It certainly did for me. I got him understanding football, which was awesome. Mo,
hang on.
Yes,
this is just for kids.
Well, I think there's some people that sit in some sections.
How about stand on the sidelines? Huh?
Can we use the concept of the bean bags and downs and 4th down and the game potentially being over? Is that what you're saying?
Do I get a discount if I buy 2 of them? Because I know who I'll give them to.
I think you might. You might. What I want to go more into Joe Burrow here first, because Dave and I were just talking about this. And what's your concern meter on the Burrow performance from the opener? We were just talking about how this is consistent. Like every year he seems to be laying these eggs early in season. Everyone's concerned, and we were blaming it on camp and this, that, and the other. And I went through some of those numbers of historically how he's been just poor in weeks 1 and 2 and a big reason for these losses. Is it that again? Did this feel different? How did you view his performance on Sunday?
This felt entirely different because of the unwillingness not to throw the ball downfield, but to throw the ball between where I'm sitting here and the wall on the other side of the room. And so I separate what I saw Sunday from last year and the year before, because I knew he wasn't 100% against the Cleveland Browns. And we knew we knew more. We knew he was coming off having an appendectomy and dealing with some physical challenges and losing weight. And okay, he went through as normal a training camp as he's ever gone through. He participated in 2 joint practices. He played in a preseason game. He is coming off wrist surgery. And what I saw on Sunday was a guy who was unwilling to throw the ball deep, combined with a game plan that couldn't get anybody open short. It added up to a troubling loss. And I walked out of that stadium going, I wonder how far from 100% Joe Burrow is.
Yeah.
I don't know how you don't go there. Yeah. None of us know the answer, but all I could do is tell you what I know. What I know is he had wrist surgery, significant wrist surgery. Your colleague Ben Baby put it in his piece. 16 of his first 20 passes didn't go beyond 5 yards past the line of scrimmage. And then on 4th and 5, they took the ball out of his hands with the game hanging in the balance. Is that what you do if you trust your quarterback to get the job done? And if you don't trust your quarterback to get the job done, are there circumstances beyond his performance, like health? So maybe he is 1,000% and he's good and he's going to go out and torch the Chiefs. But based on what I know, I can't help but connect those dots and go, I wonder how far he is away from where we want him to be. That might sound unfair. That might sound like I'm panicking, but how do you not go there? So yeah. I separate what I saw Sunday from the previous 2 years, because the previous 2 years, I knew a little bit more about where he was physically. Now, I don't know how you, and again, it wasn't that he played poorly. It wasn't that they lost. It was, why is he throwing the ball short of the stick on 4th and 2? Like, can you imagine if Andy Dalton did that? I'd have talk shows for a week. Joe Burrow doesn't do stuff like that. So is there something physically getting in the way? That's where my brain is.
Yeah. And that was the confounding part of it, because I felt like what we watched, and I watched every throw of his camp that was able to be watched. And he made throws. He threw it down the field. He made every throw you'd want him to make. Now, we haven't been allowed into practice over the last 2.5 weeks. Maybe there was regression. Maybe he, felt different. But if you watch his one drive of preseason, he had a ball he ripped to the intermediate to T. Higgins. He threw a deep ball to Yosavash. He had a deep ball to T. Higgins. It was similar to what I felt like we saw in the Colts joint practice. Some of the it didn't feel like that. And so how much of, like we heard from Dan Pitcher earlier, was he was legitimately confused by what the Patriots were disguising, which is surprising for someone of Joe Burrow's ilk. Yeah. Correct.
Yeah. Yeah.
And how much was he was just afraid to play the aggressive rip it version of Joe Burrow that we've seen. And I mean, to me, nothing. And there were examples of this. I listed in my piece how many times they threw short of the sticks on 3rd down in comparison to his history, which is like night and day, right?
Yeah.
Now, but the 3rd down and 10 at the last play of the game, I mean, the pocket is clean. It's 3rd and 10. This is the guy. I don't care about sacks. I take sacks. 3rd down sacks aren't bad sacks. I'm here to try to make a play. This is Joe Burrow. I'm here to make a play with one-on-ones running free down both sidelines in a clean pocket. And he turtles and does a soft jump pass to Zach Moss behind the line of scrimmage. What a stunning. I wrote it, what happened to F it? Jamar's down there somewhere. It was F it, check it down. That's what it was. The game, his mindset had changed yesterday, and it looked, by the end, he just looked lost. And I'm really curious to see how that evolves over the next couple of weeks, because if we don't see a change by the time we're talking about going to Carolina or Monday Night Football against the Commanders, it now becomes fair to wonder, when will it change? Because the one thing Joe Burrow hasn't said yet, and we have pressed him on it over and over again, and we've talked about it on this show, despite all the encouraging things, despite everything that we thought we saw in camp, he's refused to say that his wrist is 100% once. And we've kept trying, and we always get, well, it is a process, and I feel good enough, and this, that, and the other. Well, that told a different story on Sunday.
Marvin Lewis, I see better than I hear.
Yeah.
You can tell me you're healthy enough. I know what I watched. So from the standpoint of Joe being confused, I buy that for a series, for 2 series, for a game. And look, as the game went on, maybe if Tanner Hudson doesn't, how would you describe how he was handling the football?
Whimsically.
You know how you were describing your daughter carrying a bowl of cereal?
Yeah.
Right. It looked like he was, I remember the first time I gave my daughter a sparkler, and then I'm like, no. That's how he was carrying the football. So maybe if he goes into the end zone and scores, we're not talking about this as much. Maybe the offense from that point feels it, and the rest of the game he plays great. I don't know, but he was confused for an entire game. Joe Burrow was a 5th-year quarterback who's known for his ability to process and diagnose he was confused, there's number one. Number two, if he was confused, well, is every team on the Bengals schedule going to take that defensive look and apply it to him until he figures it out? Third, if he's confused and all he's going to do is dink and dunk, can we come up with a way to, when a guy does catch a pass 3 yards from the line of scrimmage, he can actually turn upfield and get some yardage? Because what was startling for me within the framework of how they played was how few yak the Bengals piled up. Everything was catch, get tackled. So there were no adjustments to how Joe was playing and no adjustments to how he was playing with him being confused. That's one set of issues. And then there's what you just referenced. He could say, I'm fine. And again, if he goes out there on Sunday and plays like the old Joe Burrow, we're all going to go, okay, he's fine. He's good. Now let's go. All systems go. But the biggest takeaway for me was I walked out of that stadium and said out loud to anybody who would listen. And by the way, there were a lot of angry folks walking out of the stadium.
Sure, as there should be.
But to anybody who would listen, like, are we sure Joe's where we want him to be? And I think a lot of us have just convinced ourselves because he's been practicing that he is. Right. And by the way, he might have been where he needed to be on Thursday of last week and then woke up on Sunday and just wasn't feeling it. I mean, he's a human being. But what I watched looked like a preseason version of Joe Burrow. It didn't look like the guy that I've watched become, in my opinion, at least, and in the eyes of many, the second best quarterback in the league. And if it's something that goes beyond the physical, and he was confused by the New England Patriots defense to the point that he couldn't throw the ball beyond 5 yards. Oh boy, that's a problem.
One thing that I mentioned and asked Dan Pitcher about, which I played earlier, was, it doesn't help when your first drop back of the season, Trent Brown whiffs and Burrow gets a strip sack right across his wrists and takes an early hit. And there was a couple of early hits, and the early protection specifically was questionable. The right side specifically. Alex Kappa did not have a good day. Trent Brown had some really bad moments. They settled down, and that's fine. Yeah. But it felt like that, did that leave an impact? Did that leave his wrist sore? There's discussion of it being swollen. I don't know. I wasn't down there to look at his wrist and if it looked swollen. I'm not going to get into that because I don't know. That said, you wonder how much the first contact on it brought the mental back of, I don't know, last time it felt a little achy, it snapped, right? Like,
sure.
And you get nervous when you did it and you literally just were throwing the ball like normal. And I don't know. And maybe this is us trying to go into his head, a place that we shouldn't try to go, but I wonder about the early hits and the response to that being an adjustment that he had to make, taking the first contact on it since last year when it snapped.
Maybe. I mean, when we wonder if he's not quite where we want him to be, that doesn't have to be solely tied to last November 16th. I mean, it could certainly be tied to early in the game. Whatever it was bizarre. I mean, that's the best way that I could describe it. We've seen Joe play poorly. Every player plays poorly at times. We've seen him have bad games. We've seen him make decisions that he would want back. There was nothing like what we saw on Sunday. And the opponent or the lack of quality opponent in front of him had something to do with how I felt about watching it unfold. And it was interesting. Like watching those first two series, I think we all just sort of knew this is going to have to be something they figure out a way to eke out. And maybe it's some sort of like 19-16, kick some field goals and get the hell out of here sort of win. But you can't help but wonder, when are we going to see the old Joe? And until we do, are some of the other issues going to get in the way, like the run defense that we worried about coming into the season, or like not having T. Higgins, depending on how long this lasts, the hamstring, like, the margin for error that they shrink when Charlie Jones fumbles and Tanner Hudson fumbles. But yeah, for me, my biggest takeaway was Joe Burrow really played poorly. And I can't help but wonder if that's more than just a guy who played poorly. It's It's one thing if, boy, he had a low completion percentage, but he took some shots downfield. That offense was in a phone booth. I know that's cliche, but again, Joe Burrow is throwing short of the stick with the game hanging in the balance, with his team trailing on 3rd and 4th down. That doesn't happen. Do you think if Joe is playing better or looks better, they punt on 4th and 5?
We've seen Zach Taylor make that decision before, where and it pay off in some spots, whether it be before halftime or at the end of games, where he has, with timeouts, turned it over to his defense. You know, he'd seen the 80-yard. Apparently, there's a punter now who just can kick it out of the stadium, I guess.
Yes.
Unbelievable after the 3 punters and the amount of shanks.
Yes.
But anyway, he's like, you know what? Maybe try this Ryan Rico punt bomb thing again, and know that the defense, knowing they're going to run it with 3 timeouts, can get in better position and have a better shot at it. Maybe. I can tell you this. I know their system. I know how they set up, knowing the analytics and the numbers. He knew he was giving away, depending on your numbers, 5 to 8% win probability with that decision.
Yeah.
There's no way that Sam Francis and the Bengals analytics were not in his ear there to say, this is what the numbers say. And he opted to go the other way. And this is the guy who, I don't ever take the ball out of Joe Burrow's hands. Right. I get believing in your defense. We have seen him go that route before.
With a defense that's worth believing in, not that unit on, again, when you know they're going to run it and you can't stop the run. Like, that's what was so striking to me. I understand the defense of 2 years ago, putting it in their hands. I totally get that. That unit that was, over the course of the afternoon, shown it was not capable of stopping the run. That's what was so interesting to me, was there's punting and there's the win probability crash that comes with it, but there's also, all right, guys, you haven't been able to get us to 2nd and long all day. Go ahead and stop the run when we know they're going to run. That didn't mesh. And so again, like I can't help but wonder if Joe if he just looks better, not even plays better, if he just looks better, is there less of an inclination to punt than we saw on Sunday?
And you know what? It would still be egregious, but we might talk less about the 3rd and 10 flag wave. If he was under the impression they were going for it on 4th down and getting halfway there makes more sense there, rather than launching a one-on-one hope 50 yards down the field, assuming that was possible, try to get 5 and know that 4th and 5, you're going to try to do it again. Maybe. Right. But that's, clearly that wasn't going to be for sure. And there was no thought. If you throw that pass, Zach Moss isn't getting anywhere near the sticks. Right. And so it's just, I don't know, but it is very, Zach Taylor is on the record many times. I never want to take the ball out of Joe Burrow's hands with the game on the line. And he did it. And you're absolutely correct. It makes you wonder if he watched that last give up and said, Jesus, that's not how we're going to win. We need something else.
And by the way, then it might have been the right decision, right? Mm-hmm. Then as much as I didn't like it in real time, and as much as I still don't like it, if and he's never going to say this publicly, but if he's like, look, dude, to see what happened on 3rd down, like, I can't put the game in his hands. So I'm going to see if, or the greatest punter of all time, Ryan Rico, there could be a muff. But without knowing that, then you sort of fling it back to why you're punting on 4th and 5 from the 15. And like, there's the Joe Burrow that we have talked about for 4.5 years, the $270 million guy, Zach Taylor's meal ticket, the franchise, the dude who's going to deliver this city what it's never had. You're taking the ball out of his hands against the New England Patriots on 4th and 5, not 4th and 15. So, but what we saw on Sunday was not that guy. Why was he not that guy? Is it because physically in that moment, he lost Zach Taylor's trust? Well, if the answer is yes, then there's probably something more than just, you had a bad game, right?
Imagine me approaching you before the game, and I'm going to say, look, the game's going to be on the line, and they're going to opt to take it out of Joe Burrow's hand and put it on Ryan Rico's foot.
Right.
That's how they think the winning strategy is going to play out. It just, what a crazy set of circumstances. We'll see though. Kansas City comes back. The beauty of it is we'll learn more next week, and we'll learn more the week after that. And there's no hiding in the NFL, right? Like there's just no hiding. If you're not right, it will be exposed. And it was always going to be a matter of this process playing itself out. You did not want it to look like that in week one, but we'll see how much of it was week one. Was Burrow's always been weird on week one. Maybe New England did have a great game plan. Maybe this is an overreaction and people are going to certain places just because of the outcome. Sure. I don't know, but it will play itself out, and we'll certainly be watching closely in Kansas City, but Kansas City has a possibility to feel very, very dark if it looks the same from Joe Burrow. In a week of knowing he needs to rip it a little bit more, he's still unable to do so. And if you do that, you're going to take a big old L in the defending champ's house, and it's going to be apparent that you are no longer living anywhere near their level right now. So a lot on the line for week 2. Nobody wanted it to be that way. All too familiar. I mean, Mo, I don't know how I'd like to go back and actually count up how many times we've talked since the end of last season. And I think in probably 82% of them, you've been like, I just want a fast start for once. Just for once, know what it's like to win a bunch of early games. The schedule sets up nicely for it. That's great. And then here you're staring 0-2 in the face and a mountain of concerns yet again. It is remarkable how this team continues to play the same way year in and year out.
Well, and the thing is about the 0-2 starts, if you keep starting 0-2, at some point you're going to start 0-3.
Yeah.
Now, I know they play the Washington Commanders. They'll be heavy favorites in that game, but they were heavy favorites against the Patriots. So, on one hand, you can go, they've bounced back from this before, and they have. And my prediction for the season was 11-6. I'm not moving from that because of one game. But if we're going to do the thing every year where it's 0-2, and then we have to talk about, well, game 3, it's already a must win. And can they recover if they go? If you keep playing with fire, you're going to get burned eventually. If you keep starting 0-2. And to their credit, they won game 3 last year. Then lost game 4, got destroyed. 2 years ago, won the next 2, sunk to 2-3, got to 4-4, then took off. At some point, you're going to dig yourself such a hole that you cannot come out of it. And, again, if they go to Kansas City and Joe Burrow turns into Joe Burrow and it's Burrowhead, and somehow Steve Spagnuolo doesn't copy that confusing Patriots game plan and they get out of there with a win, tone changes, narrative changes.
No doubt.
It's almost as if the Patriots game gets washed away. But we're going to do this again if they lose the game. Okay, well, here we go. They got to figure out a way to win. I mean, one time I want to go into October, looking at the teams below them in the standings going, man, how are they going to catch up?
Yeah.
And we're not doing that.
We will catch up this afternoon, Mo Egger, in Westchester.
We will.
We'll be at the B-Dubs out in Westchester. I'll be out there. We'll have plenty to talk about. We can take the temperature of the fan base out there.
Do you want to go to IKEA before or after?
Well, I need a new bookshelf. I need maybe that or a Hemnes. I'm not sure which one I need. Maybe one of those beds with the pullouts that I can try to take me 3 days to put together and break a window, throwing a hammer through it or something like that, or one of those bad IKEA Allen wrenches.
Well, they don't call them bookshelves or beds. That they have Swedish names.
Yeah, I never can remember all of them, but I do. I own a Hemnes. I know that much.
So I've told you this before. My first wife and I had a house full of IKEA furniture, and I remember putting together something called an Ektorp. And I remember my dad was alive then. He called me. He's like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "Dad, right now I'm putting together an Ektorp." Like, the F is that? Is some sort of thing that I don't own anymore. An Ektorp. And then there was an Exarby. I think the Exarby might have been the bed, if I'm not mistaken. Anyway, we'll see you at IKEA, and then we'll go up to B-Dubs and do a show.
Yeah, do they still serve the Swedish meatballs and the pancake breakfast there?
Gotta be honest with you, it's been quite a while since I've been to IKEA.
Maybe I'll have a meal after I leave there. After I have some of the wings, I'll go get
have an
some
appetizer, beat ups, then go have dinner.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the real meal. All right. Thanks. Appreciate it, Mo. I'll see you this afternoon. Have a good one, everybody. Thanks for listening.